Hi. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about the grid scale pattern for the key of C major or E minor. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and grab this piece of paper right over here. It says at the top, grid scale pattern for a key of C major or A minor. Okay? So grab that paper, pause the tutorial. Don't forget there's some information down here, and hopefully you've taken some notes already that is going to help you to understand this even more. And if you need to, grab another piece of paper if you need to take more notes, okay? Because we're going to talk about the concept about this, getting to understand it, and then how to use it. We won't be playing the ukulele today, so you don't need to grab that. Just grab this piece of paper, something in the right width, a highlighter if you want to, and we'll get started in about a second. Okay, so you got your paper. I want you to refer to this paper, okay? Not necessarily the board behind me, but refer to the paper as we follow along with the lessons. Okay, so in this particular lesson, we're going to talk about the grid. The grid is kind of a made-up name that I did to show the notes that are possible to play in the key of C major or A minor. But for just keeping it simple, I'm going to just refer to C major. But keep in mind that you can also use it for A minor, the key of A minor. So hopefully as I speak today on this topic, it's not going to be that brand new to you because you've listened to the previous tutorial, you took notes. This lesson may be a little advanced to most people. Just try to take notes and keep up, and hopefully because you've listened to the other tutorials and lesson, this is just kind of a building block for you to understand even more. Okay, so when I say that this is kind of an advanced lesson, this is the outcome, okay, of how you want to think. So when you think of the key of C major, okay, with C major, you want to be able to think of all the possible notes that you can play in this key. Also A minors, they're both the same thing. So that's what you want to do. You want to think of all the possible notes that you can play on your fretboard. That in a nutshell is what this lesson is all about. Okay, if you see behind me on the board, and I want you to refer to your music sheet as I speak on this. I don't have all the notes here, so let me talk about the reason for that. Your high G string is, I would say it's not really part of something that you can use if you're playing something that is more like a scale-oriented pattern where it goes from low to high. But the option for that is that you can go to your music store, buy a low G string, put on a low G string, and then you can utilize all the notes that's written on your paper, because it's going to go from low note to high note, kind of either ascending or descending. Now keep in mind, I don't have all the notes written out because I'm not going to talk about all of them, but if you have your paper, you can always know that you have all your notes on your paper. Okay, so in the previous tutorial, we talked about the basic C position. That's right over here, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then we talked about the C extended position. That's from C to C. And we went and proceeded and did the scale that way. Now, trying to put it all together, the final outcome to this whole series of lessons is that the goal is that you want to be able to see, you want to be able to understand, and you want to be able to envision what the whole possibilities of notes that you can play. Now, scales are fine. They're basically used for location of notes, structure, practice, but in all honesty, when most people play melodic lines, melodic lead lines, fancy licks, most people don't play scales. The scales is kind of the building blocks for you to understand a larger picture. And basically, this is a larger picture in a nutshell. Keep in mind, I'm probably be skipping quite a few steps to get here, but I went from basic to advanced. So in other words, hopefully I provided enough knowledge for you to get from point A to point B. So let me help you to understand the idea of the grid, and we're speaking in the key of C. So keep in mind, this lecture is going to be the easiest lecture of the series of scales and beyond. Reason being, in the key of C, C major, there are no sharps or flats. All you see is the regular notes. In the other keys that we're going to be talking about that's coming up, you're going to see sharps and flats. Now, keep in mind that basically everything that we're talking about in this whole series of this course is the same concept, but I think that sharps and flats added to the picture does get a little distracting. I don't think it makes it harder. It does, but it does get a little distracting, and some people get, you know, maybe a little overwhelmed or confused. But don't let that confuse you, because the same concept applies for every single pattern, scales, grids that we're going to talk about. So don't let those sharps and flats confuse you or make things more challenging. Okay, but just keep that in mind. Okay, so today we're talking about the C major grid. I want you to think of it as this way. So, you know, probably live in a house, an apartment, or somewhere, and think of it as like a map. Think of the grid as like a map from getting from one point to another point. So in other words, you know, wherever it is that you live, you probably have to go to the grocery store, or you probably have to go to the convenience store, or you probably have to go to school. Whatever the case may be, you got to go from home, you got to go from your house to somewhere and then back. Okay, so think of this as like a map. So let's just make believe that the C is your home. So my home is a C. Now I need to get to, you know, the grocery store or the convenience store or wherever it is you need to go. I am sure you, as well as I, know various ways to get from your house to wherever you're going by the different streets that's in your neighborhood. So think of it that way. So let's say I'm going from point C to point C, and that's my house to the grocery store. I know several streets that I can go to get to there. Some is shorter, some is longer, some may be back and forth getting there, but you know several streets to get to the grocery store. That's one way of looking at it. This concept, you're going from one point to another point. Now, because we're thinking of a large grid in the key of C major, all these notes are possible to play. Some are going to sound better than others, but they all will fit. Okay, once again, some notes are going to sound better than others, but they're all going to fit. So if I go from a C to a C, probably it's going to sound pretty good because it's within a scale and chordal pattern. Okay, hopefully this is not sounding too foreign to you because you took notes already and we talked about this, and that's how we're leading up to this. Okay, remember the family of chords, so this is all related. And I hope you're taking notes if you're not quite understanding or just to help you a little more. So if I'm going from C to C, I can go maybe this way, or I can go this way, then up this way. Okay, and in reverse, I can come, you know, whatever way I'm coming back from C to C. Okay, you can go in a way of scale pattern or not. And then let's say I wanted to go from C all the way to G. This might be from my house all the way to the shopping mall. Okay, I know various ways to get there. I know various streets that I can take. Some are maybe faster, some may be longer, but you do know various ways to get there. And that's the whole idea in a nutshell on how to use the grid. You're getting from one point to another point. Certain chords are going to sound strong. I mean, certain notes are going to sound stronger and better than others, depending on what chords you're playing and depending on how the music is constructed, or how the music is put together. So there's some variables on that. There's some different ways to look at it depending on how the music goes. Okay, so for now, I would say unless you're starting to understand the lectures and lessons that lead up to this, I would go with the fact, for instance, let's say you don't have a whole lot of musical training. I would go with the notes that sound the best, that goes along with the music that you're playing. That's how, or I would go with the notes that sound the best to your style of playing, your personality, what you like. Okay. Now, if you have some musical training, or you've been taking the course and you're kind of understanding this, I would put these two concepts together. I would put what you know and what you have learned so far, along with what you think sounds good to you. Okay, I would put those two concepts on and together, and that is really strong. That's really going to give you a lot of foundation and background, and really a lot of ways to utilize this. Okay, you're probably going to have to watch this tutorial several times, because this is more like an advanced way of looking at this concept. So keep in mind that as we're learning scales are good. Once again, they're used more for like a positioning, like where the notes are in the scale, how it sounds, gives you some structure to how the notes fall together. But in actuality, in general, when people are playing lead lines, melodic lead lines, fancy licks, etc., there aren't a lot of people that play scales. So in other words, you've probably heard a lot of contemporary and popular music, and then when someone's playing, let's say, a guitar or a piano or a saxophone lead line, you probably don't really hear them playing like a straight scale. They're probably playing, different kinds of scales put together that sounds good to them, or what it is they want to play. So basically, in their mind, they have some kind of grid for the key that they're playing, and they probably definitely have some background in how scales work, and they basically put it all together. So this is the final concept, the final outcome of how you want to think about when you're playing notes. Keep in mind, I don't have all the notes here, but most of them that I wanted to talk about are on the board. So from this point, you want to watch this tutorial several times, get a strong concept. In the upcoming tutorial, I'm going to show you how to practice the grid and break it down. Now, I know it can be overwhelming to envision all the possible notes on the fretboard that you can play. So when we could go on to the next tutorial about how to practice the grid, keep this in mind. You want to break it up in sections, okay? You want to think about them in sections, and you want to be able to think about them in how you can connect the sections. Okay, for instance, here's one section with your basic C scale basic position, and then here's maybe another section, and then here's another section, and then maybe another section. But the point is this: it might be overwhelming to try to envision and memorize all the notes for the grid. And once again, keep in mind that the grid is a made-up name. You won't find that in most musical terminologies and musical learning and education. But it's a way of me teaching you the concept of understanding and envisioning the entire fretboard. So I call it the grid, relating it to a map of where you live or where I live, and how to get from point A to point B, or how to get from your house to whatever destination it is you want to go through various routes. Okay, so that's the whole concept for that. Once again, please listen to it several times. And then once you kind of got a pretty good understanding of it, we're going to move on to the upcoming tutorial on how we teach you to practice the grid and the different sections. And as you're able to practice them more and more, you start to really feel that you got or starting to get a command over the understanding of all the notes in the grid that you are working on. So keep in mind, you want to get a really strong concept of this now, in this lesson, in this tutorial, in this lecture, because from here we're going to go on to scales and grids with sharps and flats in your grid. So this is going to be the easiest lesson and lecture to really get a grasp on this. Okay, with that being said, listen to the tutorial as many times as you need to get very familiar with the lesson and the information. And when you're ready, we'll see you for the next lesson where we'll teach you the how to practice the grid.